Okay, we've completed step 5. And again, we've gone through these promises, and do these promises hold true? You know, being able to look the world in the eye, being alone at perfect peace and ease. Do we feel nearer to God than we did before? All of these things need to have happened in step 5. Step 6, what we've really done in step 6, beginning the part of step 6 is, taking that time, just an hour of time, and reviewing the work that I've done up to this point, steps 1 through 5. If I can answer yes to these things, yes, I've been thorough, yes, I've been honest, I've had these experiences, then we take a look at step 6. And step 6, of course, is becoming ready or being willing to let God remove these defects of character. What defects of character? Those fears, dishonesty, selfishness, all of these self-pity, all of these things that I've identified in step 4 as being hindrances or blocks between me and God. Am I ready to let go of them? And the question comes up, well, why do I need to become willing to have them removed? I mean, it seems so obvious. But when you take a look at those defects of character, a lot of people are not ready or willing to be completely honest, selfless, to completely walk without fear. There are some things that we may kind of want to hang on to a little bit. This being willing to be completely honest. Well, on those income taxes, I kind of like to fudge them a little bit. Our commitment here is that we're going to be completely honest. Is that completely honest? So we need to ask ourselves that question. Are we willing to walk this way in complete honesty and selflessness? Obviously, it's impossible maybe to be totally selfless. But are we willing, is that our goal, and are we willing to work for that? So can God take these? Are we willing to give them up? God is not going to take from us anything we're not willing to give. And as we look, as we read these steps, it seems like, okay, step 7 then says, humbly ask God to remove these shortcomings. And again, the shortcomings, just another word for those defects of character. Many people get confused that God is just going to take it away from us and boom, we're going to be, God will not take from us what we're not willing to give. So step 7 then is, what am I need to participate in this. I need to be willing to give this to God. How do I give God my dishonesty in order for Him to take it away? I need to be honest. I need to not lie. God is not going to force me. He's not going to control my tongue and my lips to force me to be honest. God will not do that. I need to be honest and then leave the results up to God. God is not going to force me to be selfless. He will allow me to be as selfish as I want to be. He's not going to just take that away from me. My job is to be selfless and give the results to God. Fear, which we've learned was such a huge stumbling block between us and God. Fear. Am I still going to, God's not going to take that fear away from me. I still may experience fear. My job is to not allow that fear to stop me. So in any situation where there's fear involved, I am simply going to go ahead, do whatever needs to be done, even though there may be some fear involved, but trust God that He's going to take care of it. So step 7 is what we call a participatory step. I need to participate. My my giving it to God, my letting God remove it from me, my action in that is the action. Is to be honest, to not let fear stop me from doing what I should do. God will then take that and give me that peace to do this. So if I'm ready to have these defects of character removed in step 6, step 7, I simply ask, or I call it make a commitment. And it goes like this. My Creator, God, I am now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you remove every single defect of character. And here's where I believe that what we don't see sometimes, that stands in the way of my usefulness to you and to my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Amen. I've just made a commitment. God hasn't necessarily taken those things away from me. I've made a commitment that I am going to do the right things, because if will dishonesty, can I be useful to God and to my fellows if I'm still lying? Absolutely not. What have I made the commitment to do here? Take away that defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and to others. So I really need to understand that with step 7. It's not going to necessarily just go away. I find that as we continue on in this program, then the great desire comes that I need to be honest. It'll become a desire to be honest in every way. Step 7 is a very difficult step. I talked about that I believe it may be the most difficult step, because now I have to put that faith into action. The action needs to follow it. We call it the character building step. A person who is truly doing step 7 will be a person of great character, great integrity. In other words, I'm doing what I say I'm going to do. So step 7, simply that I'm not going to allow fear to get in the way of my usefulness to God and to others. I'm not going to allow that dishonesty that I've identified in step 4 get in the way of my usefulness to God and to others. We've made that commitment that I'm going to walk in this way. Once I've made that commitment, now we need more action. And again, notice, not tomorrow, not 2 weeks from now. I don't just do step 7 and then kind of sit on it for a while. Now. Now is right now. Now I need more action. We find that faith without works is dead. So faith in God without the works is useless. I need to follow that faith up with action. And then it tells us to take a look at step 8 and 9. 8 and 9 are steps, again, that I consider basically the same step. The step 8, is to make that list, or looking back into the how it works. Step 8, made a list of all persons we have harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Again, I need to be willing to make amends. But at step 8 now just says, so we already have a list of all the people we have harmed and to whom we are willing to make amends. We made it when we took inventory. So often I hear in treatment and in doing a lot of these 4th and 5th steps, they make a ceremony out of destroying the 4th step or burning it. And again, I don't know where that came from. because the book very specifically says we need to hang on to it. Because in step 8, I need that list. Why would I burn it? Just doesn't make sense. Why would I burn it? When here it says, we already have that list. We made it when we take inventory. So I do hang on to it. This whole making the list, some people are confused by, well, I need to do this. Well, no, you already have the list. So it says, we subjected ourselves to a drastic self-appraisal. Now we go out to our fellows and repair the damage done in the past. We attempt to sweep away the debris which has accumulated out of our effort to live on self-will and run the show ourselves. If we haven't the will to do this, we ask until it comes. Remember, it was agreed at the beginning that we would go to any lengths for victory over alcohol. So we want to talk just a little bit about this making an amend. To make an amend is not necessarily to apologize. The apology is a good thing, don't get me wrong. But to make an amend means to change, to add to take away from. That's an amend. Here it very specifically says to repair the damage done in the past. So, does an apology repair the damage? No, it's a nice thing. But the problem with alcoholics and addicts, we have apologized so many times, but just continued to do the same thing over and over again. Now we've set out to repair the damage. If I break a window in your car, apologizing for breaking that window does not repair that window, does it? Buying you a new window repairs the window, not apologizing for it. And I think of the example I use is that if Bill is standing at the doorway to our office here at the James House, and Bill stands at the doorway, and it's Monday morning, it's 8 o'clock, and I come driving up, and Bill holds out his hand and says, hey Gary, it's good to see you, and he holds out his hand to shake my hand, and I punch him in the nose. And then I say, gee, Bill, I'm sorry I punched you in the nose. And Bill's a forgiving guy, and he says, well, it's okay, Gary. Well, Tuesday morning comes along, and Bill again is standing at the door, and I come driving up, and as I get out of the car, Bill holds out his hand and says, good morning, Gary, it's good to see you. And I punch him in the nose again. And then I say, oh, gee, Bill, I'm sorry I punched you in the nose. Bill's a great guy, and he says, well, that's okay, Gary, I forgive you for it. Wednesday morning comes along, and Bill is standing at the door, and now Bill's a particularly brave man. What's happened with our families and those who've cared the most about us, that Wednesday morning, Bill sees me drive into the parking lot, and he's heading out the back door because he's afraid he's going to get punched in the nose again. This is what we've done with a lot of those people we've loved. We continue to apologize, but do the same thing over and over again. But Bill's a particularly brave guy, and he's standing out at the door, and I get out of my car, and he holds out his hand to shake my hand, good morning, Gary, and I punch him in the nose. What good has it done for me to apologize? Because I just keep doing it over and over again. Now Thursday comes along, Bill is standing at the door, I get out of my car, he holds out his hand and says, good morning, Gary, how are you doing? But today, rather than to punch him, I take his hand and I say, Bill, I am sorry for punching you in the nose all those times. You notice the difference there? I've changed. Today I didn't punch him in the nose. Today I take him by the hand and I say, I'm sorry I hit you in the nose for you. So Bob says, well, let's meet at the coffee shop at 7 o'clock. Okay, I will be there. So whatever that wrong is that I committed to Bob, maybe I owe Bob some money. Maybe I borrowed $100 from him and never paid him back. I go to that meeting with the money in my hand. preferably with some interest. I go to that meeting and we sit down at the table and I say, Bob, I borrowed some money from you last year. I borrowed $100 from you. I promised I would pay it back, and I didn't. And I'm really sorry for that. Here's the $100 plus $10 for interest. Would you take it? That's the way we make an amend. If it's to family, we all have family members that we need to make an amend to a spouse. Maybe I've cheated on that spouse and she knows about it. How do I make that amend to her? First of all, I don't go and just say, I'm sorry I cheated. I need to get to how did I make her feel with this action. I made her feel less than. I made her feel unattractive, less desirable. I need to be able to get to those feelings and say, I understand that when I did this, this is how it made you feel. If we're making the amend to our parents, particularly with mothers, I need to be able to say, you know, what is it like for a mom to, and I've heard this so many times from parents, I'm glad that my son or daughter is in jail because I at least know they're safe. Can you imagine how difficult it is for that mother to say that? I'm glad they're in jail. When we were born, our mothers did not have the greatest desire for us, that in their mind was not for us to end up in jail. That was not a great desire of our mother. What's it like? What did I put my mother through to make her say that I'm glad you're in jail because at least I know you're safe? We need to be able to identify with that. Not just a, you know, gee, Mom, I'm really sorry I was such a bad kid. No. Do we even realize what we put her through? I need for her to understand or be willing to hear from her what that was like. You know, I think of a group of moms getting together for coffee, and Joe's mom is, oh man, yeah, my son Joe, he you know, he just finished college and he's got a great job here, and man, he's going on to do this. And the next mom says, oh, my son Bob, you know, he's doing this, and his family, his wife and kids, and they're going to go on vacation and blah, blah, blah. They're telling about all the great things that have happened with their sons. Now it comes to your mom. And what does your mom say? My son Gary is in jail again. My son Gary is in treatment again. My son Gary walked out on his wonderful wife and 3 children. How can what that must be like for a mother. We need to be able to touch on that. We need to be willing to hear that and say, oh my God, what I did to that poor woman who birthed me and changed my diapers and fed me and nurtured me, to being in this position where she's now having to say, my son is in jail or treatment. We need to be able to go there with them and let them know that I now understand exactly what I did to them. We do that, and now we say, what can I do to make it right? I have to be willing to do whatever they ask. Most parents most family members would say, and again, I've seen alcoholics, especially alcoholics and addicts, the parent would say, well, that's okay, just stay sober. And I've watched so many alcoholics come back, woohoo, I got by easy that time because they said, just stay sober. Do you realize what you've just committed to? Their expectation is that you stay sober. Not for a week or two, or a month or two. Their expectation is that you're not going to drink again. Do you realize what you're committing to here? Don't take that so lightly. I tell sponsees that if they come back to you with a just stay sober, I'm not so sure you can make that commitment that you're never going to drink again as long as you live. What I can commit to is I'm going to work this program of recovery to the very best of my ability. I'm going to humble myself. I'm going to be honest and open. I'm going to remain willing to go to any length. We can make that commitment. Of course, I know that if we make that commitment to do that, we're not going to drink again because that obsession to drink is going to be taken away. For me to just say, okay, I'm going to stay sober, I may be setting myself up because 5 years down the road, if I drink again, guess what? Now I have to go back and make that amend again. Mom, I'm sorry I drank again. What can I do to make it right? We need to be aware of those things. We talked just a little bit about we may not be able to make direct amends to that person because when to do so would injure them or others. There are some ways that I can still make that amend, and what I'm a big believer in using a surrogate person. Maybe I've had sponsees who have abused women, for instance. So obviously, I can't send that person to that woman that he abused to make amends because for her, I'm just bringing back some horrible things. Or maybe that woman is long past this and she's now off with her new spouse or whatever it may be and living a good life. So obviously I'm not going to send this man to this woman to make an amend. But I can use a surrogate. And what I'll often do is find a woman who's in AA and doing well in her program who understands this amend-making part and tell that sponsee, you need to, and of course I first of all clear it with her for her to, is it okay for me to send this sponsee that I have to make this amend to you? And if she says yes, that's fine. I send this sponsee to this surrogate woman to make an amend for being abusive towards women. Of course, the proper way of, he's going to go through the proper way of doing this, and what can I do to make it right? Maybe this surrogate woman is going to say, you need to donate some money to the women's shelter. Maybe you need to go to some of these victims classes and speak. Whatever it may be, the cases of a sponsee who may have been involved driving a car and gotten in an accident where someone in one of his passengers has been severely hurt or killed. And maybe you need to go to the MAD panel and speak to the Mothers Against Drunk Drivers. Whatever that may be, using that surrogate person still is a case of you're making that amend. Maybe you're not making it directly to that person, but you still need to make that amend. Again, our goal is to be free, to walk in freedom. One of the things my sponsor, and some of these things I balked at it, but my sponsor would simply say, how free do you want to be? I don't know how many times I've heard that. Every time I complained, how free do you want to be? I want to be free. Okay, you go to this surrogate person. What happens if if you're going to make an amend to a person, and that person says, you know, Gary, you gossiped about me, or you called me a name that I didn't really appreciate. So I think to make it right, you need to paint my house. Well, holy smokes, all I did was called you a butthead, and you're going to make me paint my house? Or paint your house for you? No, I'm not going to do that. Wait a minute here. You said in the beginning you were willing to go to any length. Nowhere in this book do I say that the amend should be reasonable. If to make it right means that you paint that person's house, the proper amend would be to say, I have this weekend off. Would that be a good time for you to allow me to come and paint your house? Are you going to buy the paint, or would you like me to buy the paint? That's the proper thing to do here. Way too often I see sponsees saying, I'm not going to do it. You know what? I have seen this happen. That person had every intention of paying you to paint their house. They're checking out your willingness to see if you really will or not. You saying, or me saying, I'm not going to do that, that's unreasonable, just stopped me or you from getting blessed, maybe financially, by painting this person's house. Your unwillingness has stopped a blessing. So we need to understand that when we go to that person and say, what can I do to make this right? It may seem unreasonable. That doesn't stop us from doing it. We do it anyway. Unless if the request, what can you do to make it right, is illegal or immoral. You know, maybe it's an old using buddy, and you're going to make it right, and he says, well, in order to make it right, you need to deliver some drugs for me. No. It's illegal. We don't do that. So we have to keep those things in mind. I think the number one thing in making these amends is to make sure that we're working with the sponsor in doing this. That sponsor is going to know, are you ready? There are going to be people who are not going to be willing to hear that amend. I've seen people go out there and nope, that person isn't ready to do this yet, and that person get upset or mad about that. That's why you need to be working with a sponsor. Your sponsor needs to be included in these amends to help you through this process. Some of the illegal things that we've done. Maybe we haven't gotten caught. What do? Maybe I've embezzled some money from someone. Maybe I've stolen from someone and they don't know that it was me who stole it. What do we do in a situation like that? Well, what does the book say? Do we not repay it just because we haven't been caught? No. I did a harm to that person, whether I got caught at it or not. I still need to make that amend. If I've taken money from an employer, I need to be willing to go back and pay back that employer. Maybe that employer is going to say, you know, I can have you, and again, these are all things I've seen happen. Maybe that employer is going to say, you know what, I could have you thrown in jail for this. I understand that. I need to pay you back. We have to be willing to risk that. Now here's a situation where when to do so would injure them or others. If I'm married and have children, would it injure my wife and kids for me to have to go to jail? Maybe. First of all, I need to clear it through my wife. I don't just go back and make that amend and take that chance that I'm going to be put in jail for 6 months or a year when my wife is depending on me to put food on the table or pay the bills. I need to be aware of that. So if to make this amend to someone that maybe I've stolen money from or embezzled money from is going to, if it's not okay with my wife, because maybe I'm going to go to jail, I need to be aware of that. Doesn't mean that I don't pay back the money, but maybe I do it in a different way. Maybe I just put some money in an envelope and slip it under the person's office door. Whatever it would require. I still make the amend. I still pay the money back, preferably with interest, but just don't let that person know that it was me who did it. Because if I do that, it may injure my wife or others. The book, and again, we could go through many more. People have asked me, what do I do about drug dealers? I owe my drug dealer some money. Well, do you owe the person the money or not? Well, yeah, but it was for a drug deal. Maybe it meant I bought drugs from him. Again, here I don't see in here that makes a difference. Do you owe the person money? Well, yeah. Okay. How free do you want to be? Do you pay that person back? Now, do you put yourself at great physical risk to go pay this dealer? No, but there are still ways of doing this. So, we again, that working with a sponsor through this process is a huge thing. The page 83 of the big book talks about the spiritual life, and it says the spiritual life is not a theory. We have to live it. So what does that mean? We have to live it. Another spot, just those 5 words in this entire paragraph are italicized. What does it mean to live the spiritual life? We do it, regardless of what happens. It says, unless one's family expresses a desire to live upon spiritual principles, we think we ought not to urge them. We should not talk incessantly to them about spiritual matters. Our behavior will convince them more than our words. We must remember that 10 or 20 years of drunkenness would make a skeptic out of anyone. Again, it's just talking about behavior. We don't just preach. Our actions are what's going to lead them. One of the promises that in most AA clubs and when we talk about the promises of AA, this is the one that we hear the most often, and they're called the 9th step promises. They are not the only promises. They are not I've heard the 12 promises. There are not 12 promises. This promise is the 9th step promise. It talks about 12 things, but they're not the 12 promises. They're the 9th step promise. It says on the bottom of page 83 and 84, and most alcoholics or addicts who have been to meetings are very familiar with this, but it says, if we're painstaking about this phase of our development, what phase of our development? Making the amends. We'll be amazed before we are halfway through. This doesn't mean halfway through the steps. This means we're going to be amazed before we are halfway through making our amends. But listen to this beautiful stuff that's going to happen to us. We are going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. If it's a new freedom and a new happiness, this is not something that we've ever experienced before. Way too often we think of something new as still basing it on something that I've experienced in my past. No. We're going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. This is something I've not experienced in my past. It's brand new. We can't even imagine what this is going to be like. It says we're not going to regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity and we will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude upon and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. That's the guarantee of working these amends. It says, are these extravagant promises? We think not. They're being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. They will always materialize if we work for them. Do I want to experience that new freedom and that new happiness? Do I want to intuitively know how to handle situations that used to baffle me? Do I want to suddenly realize that God is doing for me what I could not do for myself? That's what I wanted out of this. But in order to do that, I had to make these amends. I had to make things right, and I had to do it the right way. I need to take a break here, Dan.